President Donald Trump had a call with Ukrainian President Zelensky and European leaders ahead of Friday's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Now, Zelensky said that Trump expressed support for a ceasefire during that call. Trump has said both sides will have to give up land to end that war. We can also tell you that just within the last half hour ago or so, while speaking at the Kennedy Center, the president stated that, well, serious consequences could be had if Russia does not come to the table and come with something that would produce something valuable for both sides. Joining us to discuss this and so much more is political strategist and attorney Eric Faddis, back here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for being patient.
Great to be with you, Guy.
All right, Eric, so it's the big story of the hour. You just heard me make mention, President Trump speaking at the Kennedy Center just minutes ago. One of the questions posed to the president happened to surround this upcoming meeting between both he and Russian President Vladimir Putin, set to take place on Friday yet again in Alaska. The question is what's it all about? What should happen and what needs to happen in order for this meeting to be deemed a success?
You know, Guy, I think Trump has to be pretty firm about his ability to impose economic sanctions on Russia, on countries that do business with Russia. Look, Russia's economy is okay, but they've been in this war for quite some time. Resources are dwindling. They're having all of these deaths. Now, on the other hand, I think Ukraine is going to have to make some concessions, right or wrong. I think those concessions are likely going to include ceding some territory which Russia is presently occupying. There's Crimea and there's 4 other main territories that are in dispute on this. And so I think both sides are going to have to come towards the other direction and reach some kind of resolution. If not, I think Trump has to consider these severe economic sanctions.
Yeah, yet again, all eyes will be on that summit, that bilateral meeting, if you will, set to get underway on Friday in Alaska. Let's move on to closer to home. In this case, the White House ordering a review of Smithsonian Museums and exhibits to ensure alignment with the Trump directive. This has got a lot of folks scratching their heads, saying what gives and what could possibly happen as a result of this, Eric?
You know, I think this is an alarming development, Guy. It sort of could be seen as a measure to reshape history in a view that is most favorable to the Trump administration and aligned with their policies. We've seen before the Trump administration has removed references to the Tuskegee Airmen, to Navajo code talkers, to non-white achievements throughout American history. And I think that is problematic, and to try and arguably erase some of that history because they don't like it is really an ominous development, and hopefully receive substantial pushback.
Yeah, to your point, something that yet again could be very concerning should history be removed. Those who are in power, pretty much history has shown, can direct which way as to how we remember history and how it's shaped. Very interesting. Eric, I want to move on because I have about 4 minutes left, and this is a big topic that a lot of folks have been discussing. In this case, it surrounds 10 years after the Supreme Court extended marriage rights to same-sex couples nationwide. The justices this fall will now consider for the first time whether to take up a case that asks them to overturn that decision. Kim Davis, the former Kentucky county clerk who was jailed for 6 days back in 2015 after refusing to issue marriage licenses to a gay couple on religious grounds, now appealing a $100,000 jury verdict for emotional damages plus $260,000 for attorney fees. Now, Davis argues First Amendment protection for free exercise of religion. Well, really, as she states, she has been treated wrong and needs to have justice and justice done immediately. Now, the petition appears to mark the first time since 2015 that the court has been formally asked to overturn the landmark marriage decision. Your take on all of this, Eric?
You know, I think there's a reasonable likelihood that the court is at least going to consider this petition. Look, and I think what it does is it sort of pits the 14th Amendment substantive due process rights, which the court has determined guarantees the right to marry to same-sex couples, against the First Amendment free exercise clause, where someone is alleging that, hey, doing something as a government official is against my own religion. And so that's why she didn't issue the marriage license to the same-sex individuals. I think the court's going to grapple with, hey, does the 14th Amendment prevail or does the First Amendment prevail? And I think in a normal world, we would think that the prior precedent would just be upheld, but this is not necessarily a normal world.
Yeah, I got to tell you, this is not necessarily a normal case as well. Davis is seen as one of the only Americans currently with legal standing to really bring a challenge to the precedent. And perhaps you just addressed it, but my question would be why?
Yeah, so in order to bring any kind of case, you have to have standing, which means you have to be personally aggrieved by some sort of governmental action. What Kim Davis is alleging is that not only were her free exercise rights impinged upon by the government in forcing her or trying to force her to issue this license, but on top of that, she did have to serve some jail time, and she is responsible for six-figure damages for her actions. And so she's saying, hey, I'm personally aggrieved. I am the right type of person with standing to challenge this same-sex ruling because it personally affected me in a negative way.
All right, we'll end with this, Eric. I got about a minute left in this case. We know that a strong majority of Americans favor equal marriage rights. Support appears to have now softened in recent years. That, according to a recent Gallup poll, 60% of Americans support same-sex marriages back in 2015, rising to 70% support in 2025. But that level has somewhat plateaued since 2020. Your take on that?
You know, the Supreme Court, whether they should or not, considers prevailing public sentiment about issues. When you look at the same-sex ruling, they in fact talked about sort of the evolution of marriage and the tolerance towards folks of the same sex getting married. Now, is this switch in public sentiment, or arguable switch, going to influence how the justices review this case and whether they think that the right to marry for same-sex individuals is still a fundamental right? In theory, it could.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Yet again, Eric Faddis, attorney and political strategist, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, my friend.
My pleasure, guy.
All right.